So let me introduce myself. My name is Raja Marsetti. I live in Amsterdam. So I'm working as Dynamic 365 senior developer come consultant. I work for Vattenfall, which is a utility-based company, which is right in the Amsterdam Central. And I have a blog with the name poweruppowerplatform.com. So if you have time, you can go through that, and you can reach out to me through my Gmail or LinkedIn if you have any questions. So yeah, so I think it's perfect. The session is right after the session of Julian Shop on customer insights. So because segments are related to both are related customer insights and segments, you must have seen Julian creating segments from the customer insights. So so what is what are segments? So that we will see the first, and then we will see how to create them, and then we will see what are the different types of segments in Dynamic 365 marketing, and we will see the real-time demo how we are going to create in Dynamic 365 marketing, and then we will see what are segments with marketing list. So marketing list is nothing but another, like, it's kind of segment, but these are old concepts. This is old concepts which is part of Dynamic 365 for sales. So we will see what are the difference between both of them, and then evaluation process of segments, how the segments are evaluated in Dynamic 365 marketing. So evaluation is nothing but how the membership update, how the membership is updated. So, and then we will see how we will create a simple customer journey targeting this segment. And then we will see how to add or remove contacts to segment using Power Automate. And then we will see the latest preview feature. So creating segment using natural language. And then we will see the segment usage report, which gives you insight on like what are the which segments are used by which of marketing components, like that. So let's get into the session. So what are segments? So this is not a new concept. So you must have heard marketing list. So which was part of which is still part of Dynamics 365 sales. So even if you don't use Dynamic 365 marketing, so when you use Dynamic 365 sales or other apps, so you will come across some basic marketing functionalities like quick campaigns and marketing list. So this is just advanced concept of marketing list, but there are major difference between segments and marketing list. So what are basically segments? So segment is nothing but the name itself suggests that it's a grouping of a collection of contacts, so that you will later you target those contacts, the group of contacts, with a customer journey. For example, let's take an example of suppose I have a store in Amsterdam, so I want to promote opening day event only to contacts who live in Amsterdam. So I will create a segment who lives in Amsterdam. So that's kind of segment. And so, suppose if I am running a sale on, for example, dresses, female dresses, then I will create a segments only for female, which like you can filter, you can create a query to retrieve the contacts who are female. So then you target those customers inside a customer journey. So this is the basic concept of segment. So segment is nothing but a grouping of contacts. And as I said, it's not a new concept. It's a rebranded marketing list of Dynamic 365 sales, and it basically runs on marketing insight service. I mean, what I mean by marketing insight service is like all the data that is stored in profile data that is stored in Dynamic 365 marketing. So will be synced to marketing insight service that is outside of Dynamic 365 server. So when you install Dynamic 365 marketing, by default, you will get you will get that marketing insight service. So when you create segments, or when you sync those data in Dynamic 365 marketing, so that by default the data will be synced with marketing insight surveys. So basically, when you create a segment, so you are running query on marketing insight surveys, not on the Dynamics 365. So this is very important point to keep in mind. So we are not running the query when you create a segment. We are not running the query on Dynamic 365. but we are running the query on marketing insight surveys. So which gives, which doesn't put much load on Dynamic 365 server, so that our performance will be increased. And let's see a few examples. So when you are creating a segment, so you basically querying across related entities, including contacts, leads, accounts, events, marketing list, and more. And you can also query data which is stored in marketing insight surveys. So which data is stored in marketing insight surveys is like all the profile data is also stored in marketing insight surveys, and the behavioral data. For example, suppose you are distributing few marketing emails, and if I'm a customer, if I am interacting with that email, so then that information is also stored in marketing insight surveys. So that is nothing but a behavioral segment. For example, the customer who clicked on email, for example, a customer who visits a website, for example, a customer who opens an email and clicks a link. So those kind of behavioral concepts also you can use them in creating segments. So that is the basic concept of segments. And let's come to what are the different types of segments. So in Dynamic 365 marketing, basically we have two types of segments, but extended, you can say three types of segments. Excuse. Yeah, so we have three types of segments. So one is the first thing is dynamic segments. So in the name itself, you can say that. So these are the queries defining the logic to create the segment. So these are set up by using logical query or logical expressions, and the membership of the segments will be changed constantly to reflect new or removed contacts and updated contact information. Suppose if you define a query and you got the segment with the number of contacts, and later you go on the contact and update that information. So that change will be reflected after some time in the segment. So that is nothing but dynamic segments. So you don't need to again add the contacts manually into this segment. So you will just define the query and it will run asynchronously. So, and it will define the membership of the segments. So you can say, for example, you can say demographic, firmographic, and behavioral segments, as I mentioned before. So these are the examples of dynamic segments. So what are demographic like? For example, contacts from Amsterdam, contacts from New York, contacts from Sweden, or contacts who has birthday, who's having birthday in the next month. So these are nothing but demographic and profile related segments. Even the firmographic is also profile related segments. For example, find the primary contact of each account. So with a budget over 1 million. So this is, you are retrieving the contacts which are related to, which has relationship with the account or company, which has budget over 1 million. So these two are profile related segments. So you are defining the query based on the customer profile or based on related entity data. So and the behavioral segments. So these are somewhat different from the previous two segments. So because here we are not retrieving the personal data or profile data, we are retrieving the contacts who have interacted or responded to your marketing activities. For example, like marketing email, or for example, a marketing page, or for example, like who has submitted a newsletter. So these kind of segments are called behavioral segment, and these are comes under dynamic segments because you are defining a query to create the segment. And then static segments. Here you won't define any query, so you will just add contacts manually inside a segment, and I'll show you in the live demo how you will see what is the UI when you create a static segment. And these are not like these are not updated dynamically. In the name itself, it says static. So you are creating the segment for one time, and you can add, of course, you can add segment contacts to the segments manually, or using some logic, Power Automate, or using Web API. Those kind of concepts are there that we will go in depth later on those. So the purpose of creating these static segments is like suppose if a marketer or consultant, marketer or end user want to have interaction, like want to send some promotional email to customers, I mean to ready-made customers, like for example, I have customers which are created yesterday, and I don't want to define the query. I just have 5 customers, so I want to go to the customers and add them to the segments right away without without defining a query. So like that, you can create static segments. And the compound segments, so the name itself suggests that it's a combination of multiple segments. So there is dynamic register marketing has a capability to, combine two segments based on logic. Like you can union two segments, that is nothing but or you can find the intersection of two segments, that is nothing but and also, and you can exclude one segment from another segment and create another segment as a result. So that's nothing but not. So these are the 3 types of segments inside dynamic 365 marketing. So dynamic, static, and compound segments. And so there are multiple ways of creating segments. So basically, most of the times marketers or end user create segments using segment designer. So the segment designer looks like, it resembles with advanced find. So you will just define the query and you will get the members which are that are satisfied that query. And then there is another way to create segments that's not for citizen developers, that's for developers using segmentation API. So so the segmentation API is nothing but web API, web API of Dynamic 365. So how it works is like, when you create a segment, it's nothing but a record in Dynamic 365 database. So so that means you can interact with that table using API. So you can create segments, and you can delete segment, and you can update the segment information. So here we are not talking about updating the membership of segment. We are just talking about the segment information. That's it. So we are not talking about updating the segments or adding or removing the contacts from the segment. So we are just talking about like creating a segment using web API or update, delete. So that concept we are talking about. And we have one major thing that we need to understand is like, so the only way to query your interaction records, that means like interaction of your marketing activities. So those records, as I said, those are stored in marketing insight surveys. So there is no other way to create a segment which contains, which queries interaction records from the marketing insight surveys. So the only way is using segmentation designer in Dynamic 365 marketing. So let's see. Let's create a simple dynamic segment, and then we will see what are the components we come across while creating a segment. So so when you open marketing, so you will see area called customers, and then you will see segments tab, and then you can create record from this. So when you are creating record, so you will see two options. Just a sec. You will see two options: dynamic segment and static segment. So as I said, like, these are the basics type of segment. But if you want to create compound segments, so you can create you can open anything and you can combine two segments. There is a block called segment block inside the segment design. So using that, you can create compound segment. And then let's create one dynamic segment. So when you try to create a segment, so here you will come across segment templates. So these are provided by Microsoft, like out of the box, like when you install marketing. So you will this will be installed, and you can pretty much use this templates to understand how the query works or how you need to define the query. So these are very useful for marketers or who doesn't have much idea on the common data model of Dynamic 365. So let's skip that for now, and let's see from scratch how to create a segment, a dynamic segment. So here, when you open that, so you will you can define a name. So let's define a segment of contacts that have qualified leads the last week. So let's define a query block. So when you define a query block, so by default here the entity, this is called entity block. I mean, so when you create by default, it is by default contact is chosen, but you can define other entities as well. But one important thing you need to keep in mind is like at the end, you will end up with contacts only when you create a segment. So as I said, segment is group of contacts. So you can pretty much give any entity, but at the end, it will be group of contacts and you will end up with contact relationship. So for example, let's see, I have defined account, but you see there is an icon. So each query block must end with contact entity. So that's what I said. So even if you give any other entity, but you need to end up with contacts. So let's say, let's keep it simple. Let's take contacts. And here you can select the attribute. So suppose if you want to filter based on city, you can say you can select the column and you can give the value here. And so as I said, like I want to define a segment that have qualified leads in the last week. So I want to see so how the lead is related to contact. So you have it. I mean, you can see here like how the contact is related to the lead. It is directly related to the lead. So this is a relationship view. This is a very cool feature to see how the tables are related with contacts. Or if you select here account, so the primary thing will be account and all other entities, how those are related with each other. So you can see that it is directly related to the lead. That means like we have a contact field on lead. So using that, let's define, let's filter the query of leads. So here, to get the leads, I need to click on add, and you can, so this is just gives you another condition to contact, and you can select related entity. So as contact is related to lead, so you can go to the lead. So for example, here I have lead, so which has this lookup field, and I want to filter on lead that the status is qualified. So I can select qualified, and another condition is, like as I said, like leads are qualified in the last week. So so I can pretty much filter on modified on field, because whenever you qualified, that becomes read only, and then you don't have any other way to modify it on. Let's assume that developers are not doing any updates from the backend. So modified on is, so let's check this. So when you click on this option, so you get two options: actual date, relative date, and the partial date. So when you click on actual date, so you can give the actual date, like for example, modified on yesterday, like that. So when you click on relative date, so you get these options, like you can pretty much query leads qualified 2 days back, or 2 days, I mean next 2 days. Those kind of queries you can pretty much define. So for example, so I want to define the query based on 7 days back, so that means last week. So I can pretty much define that. And then now I got the query. So I have pretty much defined the query. And then if you want to do that, you can add another conditions also. And if you want to add another query block. You can pretty much define another query block, and then you can perform the operations like or, and, or but not. That means excluding. So you will exclude these kind of this set of contacts with this set of context. Like that, you can define uh, 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 like another query blocks, and then as I said, like add behavior block. As I said, like you can pretty much define segments based on behavioral events. Like for example, you can see email clicked, email delivered, and email forwarded, email hot bones, like that. So let's see how you can define. So I wanna define the contacts who has clicked the emails. So, and then you can define message. This is nothing but marketing email is, for example, you can define all the whichever the marketing email that you have sent, and the customer clicked that email. For example, like this, you can define these contacts who has opened the email, and that email is clicked. So this information, these are events. These are nothing but marketing insight events, and the data is stored in marketing insight survey. So when you define a query like this, so you won't get the data immediately because it's stored in marketing insight surveys. At max, it takes sometimes 1 hour, or sometimes like for behavioral segments, it may take more based on the marketing insight capacity available. So based on that service capacity available, so the query will be run asynchronously, and the membership will be updated. So so let's define this segment. And you have few options here. The major two options are check for errors and go live. So as soon as you create the segments, you can't take this segment as part of customer journey, because this is just a draft when you create that. So so you need to go live. So when you click on go live, it will check for errors. If there are any errors, it will show you. Otherwise, like it will publish, and then it will show you the going live state. So once when you refresh, it might take some time to get to be live. So when you refresh that, it will be live. And here in this tab, you can see the members of this segment. So it will be qualified. It will be, I mean, evaluated within next around 15 minutes. So as I said, like it's not immediate evaluation. So it sometimes takes max 1 hour, or sometimes it takes more than that. And the options you get when you create a segment is like one of the major options that you need to keep in mind is scope. So by default, it is organization. So that means like this segment runs on all the data of at organization level. For example, if you give the BU, for example, another option would be business unit. Here you can define. So I want to create this segment only for the data owned by specific business unit. So like that, you can define this. So it's simple. You just define this segment, and you can pretty much create a customer journey based on this segment. So, and then another option, another way, another type of segment is static segment. And another option here is time zone. For example, where this is very much useful is like as you have seen before, I have defined the query for the leads that are qualified in the last week. So that date is calculated based on the time zone you gave here. So for example, let's give this, for example. And then you can add members manually here. You can look for contacts directly here, and you can add the members, or you can define query. So that this is nothing but the same query that we have defined earlier, but this is not, I mean, this query will not be evaluated asynchronously or dynamically. So this is just one-time query. For example, contacts. that live in the Netherlands. So you can just define that, and you will get the number of contacts that are there, and you can pretty much select which you wanna add as part of this static segment, and then you can add all. So those contacts will be added as part of that segment. And another way of adding contacts to the static segment is you can pretty much go to the contacts table and you can open a contact. Let's open this contact. And here you can see buttons to add to segments or remove from segments. So when you click on add to segments, you will get the static segments only. These are not dynamic segments because you can't add contacts to the dynamic segment just like you can select contacts to add to dynamic segments. You can only add or remove contacts for static segment only. So if you want to add contacts to the dynamic segments, so those should be part of that query definition only. So this is one point to remember, that you can't add contacts programmatically or some way to dynamic segments. You can only do that operations for static segments. So these are all static segments. You can select one and then you can add contact to this segment. So this is pretty much how you create segments, how you add contacts to static segments from contacts page. So we have seen how we have created segments, and then now let's see what is the major difference between segments with marketing list, which is the old concept in Dynamic 365 sales. And then we will see like what is the supported operation like. So as I said, like segments are much advanced version of dynamic marketing list or static marketing list, because you have rich capabilities like you can query the data from marketing insights, for example, using customer journey. So you can use segments in customer journey. You can also use static marketing list in customer journey, but those are nothing but subscription list. So you will come across a subscription list concept. So if you use Dynamic 365 marketing, so you can create a subscription box like when the customer is clicked on that. So those are added in the subscription static marketing list, and you can pretty much target those subscription list inside a customer journey, and you can do some marketing activities. So but having said that, you can use static segment and dynamic segment in customer journey, but not dynamic marketing list. And then as I said, like the static marketing list and dynamic marketing list are old concepts that are part of Dynamic 365 sales or some other apps as well. So when you install other apps, look, these are the basic marketing functionalities you will get by default. So why do you create marketing list is simply to create quick campaigns, to do some there are also some basic marketing activities like sending some promotional emails or those kind of things. You can do that. So what I'm trying to say here is like those campaigns or quick campaigns. So in that purpose only, you will use static marketing list and dynamic marketing list. You can't use the segments inside Dynamic 365 sales. And include in segment, so that as I said, like you can create segments by combining two other segments, that is nothing but compound segments. So you can combine static segment and a dynamic segment, and then even if you can combine static marketing list as well, but not dynamic marketing list. And as I said, like static marketing list is mainly used in subscription centers. So because you can't use static segment or dynamic segment, you can only use static marketing list, so that you will use if you want to create any subscription center. And then, as I said, the major difference here, the major capability of segments is like you query interaction records from marketing insight services. As I said, like when you distribute some marketing activities, when customers are interacted with those activities, if you want to define a query based on those interaction, for example, who has clicked the emails or who has opened the emails, so you can query them, query that data using segments, using only dynamic segments, but not static segments, and not static and dynamic marketing list. So only behavioral segment. As I said, behavioral segments are one of the types of dynamic segment, because when you create a static segment, as you have seen, so you don't have any capability to query interaction records, because you need to define the query, because the data is not in dynamic 365. The data is resides in marketing insight service. So that service runs asynchronously, and the membership will be updated. And another one is like, so you need to make it live if you want to make them part of customer journey, even whether it is static or dynamic segments. You need to make them live. Otherwise, for static marketing list, dynamic marketing list, you don't need to make them convert them to live state, because they, as soon as you created, they are active. And as I said, like these are runs on marketing insight service, both static segments and dynamic segments. So you may ask, like, static segment is nothing but basic queries, and that is the data we have in dynamic 365. But 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 that's not the case. Like even if it has in the data is reside in dynamic 365, but that data is always sync with marketing insight service using change tracking concept. So when you open a table in customizations, you might have seen that option change tracking, so that you need to enable to sync this table with marketing insight service. So these two are always sync with marketing insight service, and always the query runs on marketing insight service, not on the dynamic 365. And as we have just seen, you can only add or remove contact while viewing contact record. That's possible only for static segments, not for dynamic segments, and that is possible even for static marketing list. You might have seen that option of marketing list. So that and one more basic difference is like the static segments and the dynamic segment. The segment concepts runs on contacts, so not on any other data. So at the end, you will end up with the contacts data, not like leads or accounts, not like that. So you will end up with contacts only. But that's not the case with marketing list. You can pretty much query on contacts, leads, or accounts as well. And then there is major difference in terms of evaluation process also. So evaluation process is the process of calculating the members of a segment or list based on the criteria, based on the query you have defined. So there is no need of any evaluation process for static segments or static marketing list. So because those are static lists, like you will add the contacts for one time. So there is no need of any evaluation. But for dynamic segments, for demographic or firmographic segments, so that are based on profile data and relationships, for example, related entities data like leads, accounts, and orders or opportunities like that. So those are first evaluated when you go live, and then the calculation occurs asynchronously. As I said, like the marketing insight service will run this query, and will have this data, and the service will run asynchronously, and it updates the membership asynchronously. And the initial query are available as soon as after the go live process is complete, but this is not sometimes true. For production, it may happen as soon as you make the segment live. The membership will be updated, and you will see some contacts based on the query. But for other sandbox instances, you won't see as soon as you make live. It takes some time. So while live, as I said, like at max, it takes 1 hour to refresh its members list, because this time is only applicable. 1 hour max is applicable to the data based on profiles and relationships, not on behavioral data. So as I said, like here, dynamic segments based on interactions. So these are first evaluated once they go live. It's similar to profile and relationships segments, but these are evaluated whenever the marketing insight surveys have calculation capacity available. So whenever any interaction occurs, for example, if we have defined a segment for contacts who clicked on an email, so when any customer clicked on an email, so that time the segment which takes that behavioral pattern is flagged, and then it is flagged. It's not run yet, but it just flagged, and then marketing insight service will pick up that segment asynchronously whenever the calculation capacity is available. And I don't know any way to increase that capacity, and we have when I'm working with this, like we have faced serious performance issues. And then when I raised Microsoft ticket, so they said there is no way of increasing the capacity or improving the performance, but they said that it's in their backlog and they will soon, definitely after some time, they will do some developments to improve the performance. And as I said, like static segments these are populated manually. So as soon as they go live, so the membership is updated and it won't update later. So the membership is updated whenever you add contacts manually. And then the same applicable to dynamic marketing list. So these are not evaluated asynchronously. These are evaluated on demand. So whenever user opens the marketing list or refresh the marketing list, or if a campaign activity or campaign is distributing activities for the member audience, then that time it will be updated. And similar to static segments, so static marketing list are only updated when you add the members manually. So because just a static segment, so there is no query here, so it won't refresh dynamically or asynchronously. And then let's set up one simple customer journey using this segment. So it just contains two tails. So I will take a segment and I will target that segment to send a welcome email. So here in the marketing execution group, so you can see customer journeys, and you can create a customer journey here. And then, as usual, like segments, you will get some templates. For example, simple email journey. Let's take this example because we want to target a segment and just send an email. That's it. So let's take this segment. And then you will see the tiles. This is the segment to set the audience, and then you can choose which email you want to distribute. So let's take, for example, let's take an example of the segment. I have created a segment before, so that is, yeah. So I have this segment, and I want to send welcome email to the contacts which are part of this segment. So this is nothing but like when the leads have when the contacts have submitted a lead. For example, in our company we do business with solar panels. So when contact or lead have submitted interest for a type of solar panel, here in this case like poly panel. So here for this we want to send a welcome email with what is the type of the panel they have chosen, what is the price and all. So here we have defined a marketing email for that, and I can set here. And then I can define a marketing email. And one more important thing, and I think very cool feature is like you can schedule this as well. You can only schedule it for weekdays. So this email will be sent only on weekdays. and then you can only schedule it for mornings. So this email will be sent only in the mornings. So if there is any contact that are part of this segment, any new contact that is part of segments, it will wait, and it will be part of this customer journey, and it will wait till this criteria satisfies. So then in that way, you can create a simple customer journey. And when you are creating a customer journey, you get few options. So that is like a start and end date of the customer journey, and the time zone, as we discussed when we are creating segment here. Also, the dates are evaluated based on the time zone you have selected here. And the same and then same scope is similar to what we have defined for segments. And then you have one thing called suppression segment. So this is nothing but like, suppose a segment is part of customer journey, but you wanna remove some context from that customer journey, but those contacts are already part of the customer journey, and they are in the process of completing that customer journey. But you wanna remove them, those contacts in that customer journey, or you don't want to send any marketing activities for that segment. So you can create a segment for those activities, and then you can give that segment here. So when you give that segment here, so this customer journey, even though those contacts are part of this segment, but those will be excluded from the customer journey, and you won't and there is no there will be no marketing activities, or in this case, like the email will not be sent for those segments. And in this way, you can define the customer journey. And one more cool feature is, like, when you define a customer journey, for example, let's open one existing customer journey. So when you click on email, so here you will see the insights of like how many are processed, how many are in progress, how many are expired, like that. So here you can see how many are delivered as well. For example, this email, we are sending the email, you can see how many are delivered and for how many deliveries failed. And and the marketing has features to categorize that, whether it is soft bounce or hard bounce. And here also you can create these contacts which are which has problem or which are hard bounced, and you can pretty much use this button to create a segment for those contacts. And then you can again modify the data or check what is the problem with that data, and you can again take that segments as part of the customer journey. So this is very cool feature, and it's very easy to use this feature to create the segments for which email delivery has failed, or email delivery has bounce, hard bounce, or soft bounce. And this is pretty much creating a basic customer journey for a segment. And one more thing is, like, you can, when you open the insights, so you will see how many emails are delivered, and you can see how many are blocked, and you can see the insight for emails as well. For example, when you click on this email, the same insights you have seen here in the customer journey, you can see here as well for marketing emails. Like, as I said, like the interaction data, you can pretty much see here. So who has opened the email, and if anyone has clicked the links. So like that, here you can see these are the contacts who has clicked on this email. So like this, you can pretty much get all the information that are part of the customer journey and the interaction data. So as I said, like, this data is stored in this interaction data is stored in Marketing Insight Service. And then let's see how we can remove or add contacts programmatically or Power Automate or Microsoft Flow. So as I said, like, you can only add or contacts that are part of, that are type of static segments only. You can't add contacts, programmatically like that, like one contact at a time to dynamic segments. So dynamic segments that are defines the query that you want to query, and the contacts are part of that query only. Not like you can't add an individual contact or set of contacts to dynamic segments. And so as I said, like we can add or remove contacts to segments using Power Automate, and there is another way to add that is also Web API. As I said, like you can do those operations, basic operations using Web API. So that are of course the basic concept behind is it's an action, custom action inside Dynamics 365, and it comes with Microsoft marketing installation. So the action name is segment members update. So you will update, you will add or remove the contacts using that action. So you can use perform an unbound action in Power Automate. It's a connector. It's a Microsoft Dataverse connector. And you can add contacts by mentioning the contacts IDs. And so here you can see another option as well, MSD, the query. So here, this is nothing but a segment query definition. So that I will show you later how it looks like, the segment query definition. And you can pretty much the simple way to add members in segment is like by defining the contact ID, GUID of the contact, and the operation name is add by IDs, and the action that you use is segment members update to add contacts to the segment. And in the same way, you can use the same action to remove the contacts from a segment. So that operation name is remove by IDs. You can just define, you can just give here the contact IDs. And this is not only for single contacts. You can give here the array of contact IDs, the string array of contact IDs. You can pass it here, and you can add that members to the segment. And so as I said, so the query here is like how the query looks is, so when you define a segment, so that that query will result in segment query that is called segment query, and you can pretty much see that the query in here in the query view. So this is nothing but the segment query. So you can pass this query, and in that Power Automate here in the query, and you can add segments or exclude segments, exclude contacts from that segment using that query. And you have an article in Microsoft Docs. So inside developer guide. So as I said, like you can use Web API to perform CRUD operations on segment records, and you can pretty much go through this article and perform operations on segments. And the concept that we are discussing now is like removing contacts or adding contacts to static segment. So as I said, like this is nothing but an action. So the same action that we use there. So you will pass the IDs here. Like a string to add or remove segments. Here is the operation name, remove by IDs and add by IDs. And another way to add segments or remove contacts from segments is by defining the query, add by query, and this is the query that you get. And for me, I think for me it was very easy to pass the member ID, so that's why I didn't define it using the query. But there is a separate article in Microsoft Docs that I will again post in the chat, so that you can learn how to create these queries, so that you don't need to pass the GUIDs as a parameter in the action. So that is pretty much. I have defined a Power Automate, so which does that, which adds contacts to a segment. So I have defined based on a type of segment. I have a field which defines which for which to which segment I need to add this contact. So I can put a condition, and based on that condition, I can add contacts to the segments. So please do remember, this is only for static segments, not for dynamic segments. And the scenario I have used here is, so as I said, like a contact can be part of a customer journey only once. So it can't be part of the same customer journey twice or multiple times. So that's why we got a scenario to send customer email even for repetitive customers as well. For example, I have submitted a lead now, and in the process I have refused to made an order, and the contact still exists for 3 months for GDPR. The GDPR rule says it shouldn't be there after 3 months like that. But suppose, for example, next month if I come up again and I have submitted a lead, so then my flow runs add contacts to that segment, but that as it was already part of that same customer journey, so it will not send an email. So that's why what I did is I have created another segment, and then I'm adding that contact to that segment. It's a repetitive for repetitive customers. So this is not a major scenario, but sometimes it exists. So in this way, you can add contacts to the segment or remove contacts to the segment, and you can define the query that I have told you. And the next one cool feature that recently Microsoft has introduced is when you are defining a segment, so you need to define some query for dynamic segments, right? Sometimes it's quite, sometimes for some people who doesn't have idea how the common data model is, how the tables are related. So for those people, it's quite difficult to define a segment. So for them, Microsoft made it more easier to define a segment using natural language. What I mean natural language like is will just type something, and automatically the query will be defined based on the text that you entered. So like this. So you will enter contact who live in Sweden or contacts whose birthday is in next month here, and the query will be run automatically, and then it will define the query. So most of the times it's correct. For example, if it's not correct, then you can pretty much change the query, because when you are defining the query for the first time, you may not understand. But when you run the query and when the query is defined like this, so maybe later you may understand, okay, I just need to change that like that. So that makes the marketer's job easier. So it just enables you to common words and phrases to describe the people you want to include in dynamic and static segments without learning, as I said, like without learning the data model of Dynamic 365. So let's see that. Let's see that once how we can create that in. So let's create another segment. Escape, and you click on query block. So here, so it says like as soon as you open this, here it gives you a box to enter the text. For example, so I will just enter this, and if you have already searched here, so you will get the list. Suppose text in Sweden. So when I click on enter, so it will define the query, and it gives the query is defined automatically. You don't need to do anything. So like that, you can define the text here, and the query will be defined automatically using AI feature inbuilt in the marketing. And when you click here, so you will see already some examples. So you can pretty much use that, or you can change the text using that, and you can enter your new text as well. And when you click enter, the query will be defined. So it's a cool feature, I think. So you don't need to understand the common data model to define a query. You will just enter the text, and the query will be defined for you. But the note we need to keep in mind that this is a preview feature, not at live. So you can't use this in production. You can just try it in your sandbox version. So and then we will see the one of the other cool feature that Microsoft has given pre-built is like it gives you lot of reports, many reports on marketing data, so that you don't need to create the reports on data or leaderboard or those kind of things again manually using Power BI or anything. It gives you some out of the box reports. You can just pretty much download those templates and you can connect to your Dynamic 365 instance and the reports are run. For example, as we are discussing about segments here, so we have a segment called segment. We have a report for that usage report, so which gives you the overall picture of what are the segments that we have in our instance, and where these segments are used and what are the most used segments and which are orphan segments. For that means the segments which are never used, so that you can delete those segments because you never used them. And it looks like this. And let's open it in Power BI. So I have downloaded that report, the sample report from Microsoft. So here you can see these are the segments, journeys with the most segments. And when you click here on the segments, it gives you which segments are part of this customer journey. And you can see the most used segments as well here. For example, so here you see the segment which is most used is 18, but it doesn't have segment name, so it's just a sample data. So like this, you can see the most used segments, and then you can see the segments which are never used. So you can pretty much delete these segments or do something about these segments. So it gives you overall picture of so how many segments we have and what are the most used segments, and what are the customer journeys we have, and which are the segments that are part of the specific customer journey. So it gives you the overall picture, and it's very easy to use, and you don't need to build this report. You will just see these reports here in the Microsoft Docs. So here we have a template gallery. So it gives you all these reports: email marketing report, segmentation report. This is the report that I have shown you. You can report the sample. You can download the sample report, or you can download the template, and you can pretty much define the. Connect to the instance, and you can see the data. So that's. I think we came to the end of the session. So thank you very much for your time and for attending this session, and let's open the session for questions. And I think we are done with the time as well. So so to have another session, to have the next session, so you can post your questions in the chat. I can answer, and I will post some resources as well here that gives you more information on the segment.
Thank you once again, Roger.
Yeah.
Joining us from the Netherlands, yes. Holland, I believe.
Yeah.
So thanks once again for sharing your experience of using segments, constructing segments.
Yeah.
It is a learning curve, I have to admit. It's not something you can just pick up and use straight away. There is an architecture behind segments, which I believe you've basically addressed today, which is really good, to help people understand how they can query the segments and how the mechanics work behind the segment. So that's very, very important when working with segmentation for Dynamics marketing. There are a few questions. I think I think we should at least quickly have an answer. So Evangelist has asked, is the functionality managed by standard D365 security model? And also one comment about deployments between environments as part of the release process. Yeah, so quick answer for that, Evangelist. So the and I'm sure Naraj can also testify to this, is that the deployments between environments have to be the change tracking feature on the entity needs to be enabled first and foremost. for this to work, for segmentations to work. So if you want to add a segment into your marketing automation, you have to enable the change tracking on the entities. So that is a prerequisite when you're doing your deployments. You have to do that. There are other considerations you need to make as part of Dynamics marketing deployments. We're going to be covering that tomorrow. But we are at the end of the time. Niraj, if you could feel free to answer the questions in the chat. But thank you once again for this session. I think it's highly valuable, an important part of the Dynamics 365 architecture and ecosystem. So thank you, Niraj.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you so much. Okay, awesome, guys. So we are on the hour now, and our next guest speaker is not from the Netherlands. He is not from the UK or from Australia, and from all the great places that we've had our speakers from today. He's from the US of A, NYC, New York, New Jersey. Mihir Shah, are you there?
Yes, Raj, I'm here. Thank you.
Hello there, Mihir.